Gary O'Sullivan knocks out Antoine Douglas in the seventh round on the undercard of Billy Joe Saunders versus David Lemieux. This fight was for the WBO Intercontinental, I think it was, belt. So this is essentially a ranking fight for these two guys. O'Sullivan won, obviously, so he's gonna, I'm assuming, shoot up in the WBO rankings. He did say post-fight that despite the fact that Billy Joe Saunders is a friend of his, he would like that rematch with Billy Joe. He was talking in destructive terms. He did a IFL interview. He said he wants to break Billy Joe's ribs and break his jaw and go for a drink with him afterwards. So I respect the ambition of Gary O'Sullivan. As far as this fight here with Antoine Douglas, it was typical O'Sullivan, really. I saw O'Sullivan's previous fight against, God, what was the guy's name? Nick Quigley, right? I saw his fight against Nick Quigley. I think that was in Boston. If you like Rock'em Sock'em Robots, you know, some people are very snobbish when it comes to slugfests. But if you do like slugfest, if you do like Rock'em Sock'em Robots type fights, then Gary O'Sullivan versus Nick Quigley was exactly that. You know, that was a proper, just toe-to-toe slugfest from start to finish, really. And this fight here against Antoine Douglas wasn't really that, because Antoine Douglas was trying to box and move and what have you. Gary O'Sullivan was fighting his typical fight. He marches forward with his hands up, he cuts the ring off, and he tries to hit you hard wherever he can hit you. In the body, in the head, on the arms, with jabs, right hands, hooks, anywhere he can hit you, whatever he can hit you with, he'll try it. And it worked for him. I want to quote a movie that most of you have probably seen, and that is Scarface. There's a moment in Scarface where Tony Montana says, "The eyes, Chico, they never lie. It's all in the eyes." When I looked in Antoine Douglas's eyes, when he was in that ring with Gary O'Sullivan, he had the look of a victim in his eyes. I know some people might think this sounds odd, but the expression on his face and the look in his eyes, even from the early part of the fight where he was doing quite well boxing and moving and winning the first few rounds, he didn't have the eye of the tiger look. He had the eye of a victim look. He didn't have the eye of a predator look. He had the eye of prey look in his eyes and on his face. I don't know if anybody else noticed it or people think I'm talking rubbish here, but that's what I saw. And for me, Gary O'Sullivan had the opposite. You know, he had the look of a hunter on his face. And that's why I felt like it was only a matter of time. As I was watching the fight, I feel like it's only a matter of time before O'Sullivan gets to this guy. The expression on his face, his body language, he's not giving off the right signals. Even though he was trying hard and he took good shots, and it took a lot of, you know, hard shots for Gary O'Sullivan to wear this guy down and eventually take him out in the seventh. From very early on in the fight, I noticed that I'm not sure Antoine Douglas has the correct will in this fight to win it. And when you've got two guys who are of a similar level, Antoine Douglas, you might say, is more skilled than Gary O'Sullivan, maybe because they have different skill sets. Antoine Douglas is good at cutting off the ring and walking opponents down as Gary O'Sullivan, so I don't know whether he's more skilled, but you know, potentially he is. But they're of a similar level, Douglas and Spike O'Sullivan. When you've got two guys who are at a similar kind of level, ability-wise, it often comes down to will. It often comes down to who can impose their will on the other guy. And Gary O'Sullivan was able to do it early. He had the stronger will. Antoine Douglas, as I say, he looked like the hunted in there. Not just because of the fact he was moving around. You know, some guys can move around like Billy Joe in the main event against David Lemieux, but he never looked like the hunted Billy Joe. He looked like he was in control. He looked like the ring general. He had that eye of the tiger. You know, Muhammad Ali used to move a lot in his fights, but again, he had that steely determination in his eyes. And it would manifest through the showboating and all that kind of thing. This is something you need in boxing. I don't just want to say to make it to the top level, because some top level fighters don't necessarily have steely determination. They can make it by on having just vastly superior skills or vastly superior natural ability for a certain amount of time anyway. But it certainly helps if you have a very, very strong will in boxing. And most of the all-time greats had that. You look at Floyd Mayweather, for example. When he got hurt by Shane Mosley, and that's probably the worst he's ever been hurt in a pro ring. When he got hurt by Shane Mosley in that second round, look at the expression on Mayweather's face. He didn't have the look of a victim on his face. He almost had the look of a guy who was offended that Mosley hurt him. You know, he was like, I'm not going to take that from you. Who the hell do you think you are? This is my house. That's the look that Mayweather had in his face. That's the look that he had in his eyes when Mosley hurt him. And that's why he was able to get control of the situation. One of the reasons he was able to get back control of the situation again relatively quickly, despite being hurt badly. That's the mentality that a lot of these top level fighters have. Not all of them, but a lot of them. That's the mentality they have, and it works very well for them having that kind of mentality. Believing themselves to be the superior entity within the ring and imposing that upon the opponent. Making them know, I'm superior to you. It don't matter what you hit me with, I'm superior to you. This is the mentality. That's what Spike O'Sullivan had in there against Antoine Douglas from very early on, from what I saw. So yeah, a good win for Spike O'Sullivan. He chopped Antoine Douglas down over the course of 7 rounds, wore him down, dropped him in the 7th. Antoine Douglas got up. He looked like he said he could continue, but you could tell the look in his eyes, and I think the referee could tell the look in his eyes and the expression in his face. He'd had enough, so he called it off. Good win. Will Spike O'Sullivan fight Billy Joe again? Will he get that wish? I think there's potential that he might be able to get a Spike O'Sullivan fight again. Billy Joe is probably going to have to wait a while before he gets either Canelo or Triple G. In the meantime, he's just had his mandatory against Lemieux, so he'll be allowed a voluntary. And given the fact that the Lemieux victory is being held in such high regard by so many boxing fans, I don't think anybody's going to be that mad if he takes on a Spike O'Sullivan in the meantime. You know? So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below about Spike O'Sullivan's performance. If he would do any better against Billy Joe in a rematch. I personally don't think he would. You know? Who else should Spike O'Sullivan target if he don't get the Billy Joe rematch? Let me know what you feel in the comment section, people. It's Antoine, I'm out.